Okay, I start recording now. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome Rayan, welcome guys here. It's my honor, my blessing moment here to see you, Rayan. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation to share your valuable experience. As I already mentioned to my students there, you are number one notable students that I feel so proud for my whole teaching profession to know you are number one students. Just let me surprise you. I have Dr. Bukhari here with me. He wants to share the honor to talk about you. We both feel that you are extraordinary students, have a worthy experience to be shared. Dr. Bukhari, is the mic with you? Dr. Bukhari, I don't know if Dr. Bukhari is hearing us. Maybe until Dr. Bukhari arrange his mic. Let me see, he's on the WhatsApp. Yep. Okay. It seems the mic is not given to, let me put Dr. Bukhari as a introducer. Can you use your mic right now, Dr. Bukhari?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay. So you can hear me now. Right. That's good. Okay. Just one
Dr. Bukhari.
Yes.
Should we go back again, just drag our time back 1 year ago?
Yeah,
to enjoy the
go.
same experience?
Yes, we can do that.
I wish we can.
Okay. So I think you can see me. You can hear me here.
Nice to see you.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum, gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Rai, Dr. Mr. Rayan, and all the classmates here, friends here in the class. I believe you can hear me. You could see me as well. Well, Dr. Rai introduced something. I just want to put an iceberg to think about. This course is a course with hundreds of students on a regular basis. And he said a person as number one in the list. That should be something that is lightening, that it picked his mind to say a person as number one. So I will rewind my batteries back to 2020, somewhere in October, where we got an email from Mr. Rayan. Okay. It was a surprising email for Dr. Raid, and he did forward that email to me as well. Right. I'm reading that email. It was in October the 4th, 2020. So it is more than a year and a month. In this email, the Rayan, I would not call it as a student. It was a mentality of him to try out something, explore something, and share it with the teachers. Right. So this initiated further movements, further tripping among the teachers as well. So why this is important? Okay, this will be my theme of today, and I leave the floor to Mr. Rayan. Why it is important? IT, computing goes very fast, develops very fast. Whatever I studied as an instructor, I'm not teaching you what I studied, which I studied 15, 20 years ago, correct? So now I'm studying, along with me, you are also studying. So it is a game where we instructors learn from the students. So I'm proud to thank Mr. Rayan at this moment. He initiated a key where what he did, he went to the same weekly writing business. He looked at the blogs using a scrapper, using Python, collected information and created a word cloud, which means who are using what words, how many words are used by who, and kind of a word cloud by his own. From there, we moved on to something else, which is basically a kind of auto grader, which uses scrapping of his same technique. Thank you so much, Mr. Rayan. I wish your speech will inspire many of us to be a writing star in a class. Everybody is a star. Everybody is unique. And they just have to be lightened up. I'm sure your session will lighten our friends in this class. Thank you.
Thank you as well. So I guess I should begin my talk.
Wait, still one more surprise. Thank you very much, Dr. Bukhari. I highly appreciate it. You share my honor by presenting with me tonight. One more surprise, Rayan, that has dragged my attention. I shared with my students, just let me share the screen here. Right now, I want to start reflecting on that, and then we jumped to our story.
Sure.
Remember when I discussed with you last week, I wanted to design that flyer and so on. I wanted to use that fancy organization's name, fancy words here and there. And what dragged my attention, and this is wallahi taught me a lesson. Look, the age gap between you and me is about 20 years. And this has taught me a lesson. You are 100% right. You want people to come to know, you directed me, you guided me, not to use the name of organizations, the name, the reputation, the things that surrounding people names is not that interesting to you. You want to sell yourself as a person. You want people to come you as a Rayan, what knowledge, what achievements that you have. You don't want to mention Tamara, your Canadian university where you are moving to. And this is, wallahi, I highly appreciate it. I share with my students to tell them that look at the level that this guy reached. And you make it also simple for me. And that is why I said no more words here to say about Rayan. You come and see, you see yourself. Just a little bit of reflection about this, and then I'll let you free to jump to start talking. What makes you, Rayan, to say this?
All right, so I've been actually learning a lot about psychology for the past few months. It's just something that has interested me, and since I started and I'm going to talk about this later on throughout the talk as it progresses. But once I started, I had a bunch of goals of mine. I had the goal of getting an internship. I had the goal of getting into Waterloo. It was my dream for years to actually enter Waterloo. But once I achieved my goals, I just felt empty. So, and that's the premise for this talk that I prepared. So, like, what next? What's a goal that's further than just an internship, then further than just the university? So my goal for this talk is to really inspire you guys to go beyond just the grades, beyond just working towards getting an internship or a job. I want to inspire you all to go beyond that.
That's really great. Really great, Rayan. Thank you very much. Just let me tell the guys here, guys, this is an informal meeting, informal session. We allow you guys to ask questions, but Rayan now prefer to have the first 30 minutes to deliver something, to organize. He organized his session to have a 30 minutes delivering his talk, and then we come to that concept of question and answer and interaction. Feel free to ask Rayan. Mr. Rayan,
yeah, definitely.
You can go ahead right now. I'll let you free for about 30 minutes.
All right, so about 30 minutes to 45 minutes, I prepared a bunch of ideas I wanted to, just share with you all. And if you have any, questions that my hope for the talk is to actually inspire thought, So I really hope that all of you, come up with, some ideas. Maybe you found, something you could add upon my ideas and so on. So definitely after that, we would, have an informal session where we could just, answer a bunch of questions. And I hope that that part would be much more interesting. So since, we're actively exploring your ideas and questions and, being able to answer them, I hope that that would be a much more interesting part than the first part where I just give the talk. But I guess I'm just going to start out with, hello, everyone. Hello, Dr. Ad. This is the second talk that you've done with me. I did another talk with you before last year in the second term. And when I took CPIT221 last year, I was just so amazed at how passionate you and Dr. Bukhari were at actually, teaching your subject, your topic. And, that just inspired me to go well beyond the limits of of your course. You know, I didn't really care too much about, you know, getting a good grade or whatever. I wanted to expand my knowledge. I wanted to really learn what exactly I wanted to be doing and so on. So I guess I'm going to start out with a question, you know, why go to university? And of course, you guys could, you know, perhaps give your own input into this. What makes you guys want to go to university? Like, what's your goal with that? And of course, I have an answer that I hope would be pretty inspiring to you guys, but let's hear what you guys think. Why exactly do you want to go to university? Or what's the point of going to university?
Go ahead, Hamad. Hamad, you can go ahead. I don't know if you wanted to answer the question, Hamad, or you want to clarify a comment or to say something.
I think you muted the chat, by the way.
It looks like, yes. It looks like I'm not allowing. I think I forget to make the settings. Where is Hamad? He want to use his mic. Where is that?
You could open the chat as well.
Okay. Chat is open, guys. Yes.
ايه خلاص
Alright.
تمام.
Go ahead, Hamad.
أول شيء حاب حنا يعني نسلم على ريان، يعني ما شاء الله، يعني من يوم ما دخلت الكلية دائما اشوف الناس يتكلمون عن ريان سواق. شوف ريان حتى اللقاء اللي فات يعني نسيت والله شو اسمه هذا، بس كان تكلم انت ساعدته في فيصل، ايه يوم ساعدته في الموقع. ف خل اجاوب على السؤال ليش احنا نروح للجامعة. للأمانة هو كل شخص له دافع، بس أنا بالنسبة لي دافع اللي عندي هو صراحة تعرف على الناس، هذا أول سبب. ثاني شيء يعني طلب علم بالنهاية. بس هذه الأسباب اللي أشوفها يعني بالنسبة لي يعني تخليني أروح الجامعة. يعني أنا عاد أقدر يعني.
That's a great answer.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so do you have anything else you wanted to say?
I think we have Unknown wanted to say something.
لا خلاص شكرا.
Thank you very much.
That's actually a great answer, and that's aligned with what I have prepared. So I think that a big problem that I see with many students is that they have no goal, you know? And if you do not have a goal, then what exactly are you actually working towards, you know? So it's really important to be able to understand yourself and understand what exactly motivates you and what goal should you be pursuing, you know? And now a common goal that many people pursue is, you know, I want to go to, I want to study for my courses, you know, because of my GPA, you know, I want to get a good mark in my classes. And, you know, at some level, I think that's a better goal than having no goal, of course, but that still isn't that great of a goal, you know, like what does the GPA mean? You know, it's just a number. So I think that there's something much deeper that you could be pursuing. And, you know, personally, if I, you know, I have a pretty high GPA, but it was never about the actual marks. And if I studied for the marks, I would be extremely bored, you know? Like, why should I be studying so hard just for a number, you know? So I think that that's probably the most common goal that I see most people doing, you know? They're trying to study for the courses. I'm telling them, you know, this is some stuff that might go beyond the courses. And they're like, you know, is this going to make me get a higher grade? But, you know, I think that it would be good if you were not only pursuing your grades, but something higher. Now, the second thing that most people want to pursue is a job, you know, like most people, they want to get an internship. They want to, you know, eventually get a job. And that's a pretty good goal for someone in university, you know. But the thing is, why should someone want to hire you, you see? So we're going to explore that later on. And I have another question that I think would, you know, build the foundation for everything else that I would talk about. You know, what makes a game interesting to play, you know? Let's see if the chat is working.
Guys, is the chat working on your side? Is it working? Can you view it, Rayan?
I could see it, but I think it's Yeah, okay, great. So my question is, what makes a game interesting to play, you know?
There is a big problem here. But I'll
Okay,
make
what is
all
it?
of them presenter. Yes, go ahead, Saud, until I fix the other guys.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, teacher, doctor, sorry. Okay. The chat is open now. I think the most important thing in the game is to improve, like to go a higher level. This is the more important. This is based on what you said. The main goal of entering university is to improve ourselves, to be
Yeah,
better in
definitely.
our life, not just to make friends, as my friends say. Sorry, but
I mean, friends are also pretty important.
yeah, you should improve yourself to make yourself present in everywhere, like you, Rayan, mashallah.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Now,
it.
okay, that's it. Now, I guess whenever you're playing a game, you know, and I guess I'm gonna give you some context. So, what exactly is the most popular game nowadays? You know, it's Minecraft. You know, but what exactly makes Minecraft interesting to play? You know, the logic for the game is incredibly simple. You know, you're just placing a bunch of blocks and so on. So, what makes it and you know that it definitely has something deeper than just, you know, placing a bunch of blocks, since, you know, it is the most popular game in the world. So what I think is makes Minecraft so popular is that, you know, there you are interacting with the game mechanics. You know, you are the person that makes the game interesting. You know, and another thing is that you're not going to be playing a game on your own. You're also playing with other people. You know, so I think that tells something really fundamental about us as people. You know, we want to be social. We want to come up with ideas. We want to implement our ideas. You know, and rather than so definitely there is something deep about that. You know, and if you want to go with that definition of a game, you know, like you're interacting with other people and you're sharing your own ideas, that means that Minecraft isn't even the most popular game. You know, the most popular game is a platform, an environment where we could share our ideas, discuss things with other people, and that is social media. You see, so it's social media is the most popular game. It's a game which anyone can play. Any people of all ages, of all professions, of all backgrounds can play. You see, so I think that tells something very fundamental as us as people. You know, we want to communicate. We want to have ideas. We want to, you know, interact with other people. You know, and it shows that, you know, being able to communicate is incredibly important. You know, and that's what I feel like the goal for CPIT221 is. You want to be able to communicate with other people better. And another thing is, you know, when you study, why do you study alone? You know, if the most enjoyable thing is to play with other people, then why do you study the thing that you do the most in university alone? You see, and so rather than studying alone, what I do personally is I study with other people. You know, like originally my first goal for when I entered FCIT, when I began CPIT 221, was to meet other people. You know, to make friends. You know, and through that, you know, I was able to meet a lot of other people. You know, like for example, Khalid al-Asmari. We were able to, you know, develop our programming skills together and so on, and eventually from there I decided, okay, I want to study with other people. We you know, I created several groups which, you know, most people in FCIT 2020 are in, and I'm pretty sure that you're in the FCIT 21 group as well. So a very fundamental part of, you know, how I study is to teach. You know, and you see me making lots of YouTube videos and, you know, even coming together with other people to actually learn together. You know, and if you really want to master a subject, then you should teach it. You know, and this is something called the Feynman technique. You know, if you ever heard of Richard Feynman, the physicist, that is a technique that he, you know, is attributed to. If you want to really master a topic, then you should try teaching it. And that is what I was trying to do with the YouTube videos I was creating. You know, and you might have seen my first YouTube video, which, you know, I made as the introduction video for CPIT 221, where we aligned our goals with CPIT221. And, you know, I think a big reason why I was so, you know, I went so deep in CPIT221 is because my goals were fully aligned with the course, you know. I wanted to, you know, create projects of my own to, you know, advance my knowledge. And through that, you know, I needed to, you know, share the things I've done with everyone on, you know, Twitter and so on. And the second thing that I wanted to do was meet new people, you know. So networking is, and you know, the title of my video was my goals for CPIT221, how CPIT221 would make me or advance goals into becoming a software engineer, you know. And I'm proud to say that after half a year, I actually reached that goal, you know. So since I brought my goals out, you know, I was able to actually achieve them, you know. And what I mentioned in the video was pretty impressive, to be honest. I was creating a bunch of projects. I was actually doing stuff that made people see that I was actually able to, you know, provide value and so on. And I'm going to touch on that later on. And the second thing that I mentioned was I wanted to meet new people. Now, way back in the foundation year, I knew nothing about programming, you know. I entered university, and while I had the grades to, you know, study in other universities, I had nothing else to say for myself, you know. I had nothing interesting about me that I could really, you know, tell people about. But once I entered the foundation year in KU, I decided, all right, let me actually learn programming. You know, I wanted to study computer science. I was like, all right, let me actually do that. And the way that I did that was I went online, you know. The internet is a massive place. If you want to actually learn anything, then you're going to find it in the internet, all right? So I went online. I actually started interacting with communities, and I, you know, talked to other people who were actual software engineers, or they were working, you know, as in IT, or they were working in web development, or, you know, design and so on. And I even met, and now originally I wanted to become, you know, a full stack developer, but eventually I met a computer science student, or I created a bunch of projects with, you know, people who were actually working in the industry. You know, I was even making a project with one guy who was in Microsoft, you know, and eventually he was so impressed with me that he wanted to refer me to Microsoft in Silicon Valley. But, you know, I knew nothing about programming. I just started out in my first year. And I think that tells something really important, you know, rather than just going straight for a job, what you should do instead is you should become valuable, you know. You should show other people that, you know, you're interested, you want to actually learn, and you are doing impressive stuff. And once people see that, they're going to give you opportunities, you know. You don't need to look for opportunities. If people understand that you have these skills and you are good at what you're doing, people are going to come to you, or they're going to ask you to help them, and, you know, provide you with opportunities. And I'm going to touch on that later on. Now, the question is, like, what exactly should you learn? Now, I think the first guy who opened his mic, he mentioned, you know, he wants to learn. Now, all right, is the chat working? I'm pretty sure oh, Khari does. Could you let talk for a bit?
Okay, it looks like the settings from the beginning, I changed it right now, but it looks like it cannot be implemented right away. But anyway, okay, go ahead, Ammar, please.
Yes, doctor. Yeah, I just want to say that chat is all for participants. All the presenters are able to chat.
What should I do now? What about those who right now just recently joined? Can they use the chat? Because I changed the settings. Okay. I don't want to close and come back again. Okay, Hamad. Hamad, go ahead. I'll try my best. I don't want to disturb you, Rayan. You can continue. Hamad, do you want to say anything?
No, I just want to mention that the chat don't work. Just that.
All right. So I
Oh.
think what we should do, like going forward, is if you have a question, then just raise your hand. Or if you have
I'll try to fix it. We have a Yazan here. Yazan, go ahead. Yazan looks like he has a question. Or I'll place all of you guys in the participant side. Go ahead, Yazan. Use your mic. Okay then. Go ahead, Rayan.
All right. So I guess
Did you ask them a question?
No. I guess I'm just going to continue. All right. So I guess like what most people should do in university is really find what they want to actually be learning, you know. Now, I think that something that you could do is look back to your past, you know. If you look to your past and you see that there's, you know, everyone's interesting and everyone's, you know, special if you really go deep into, you know, who you are and so on. And I think that a great place to go to look for inspiration for yourself and your goals is to look to your past, you know. Now, okay, great, the chat's working. Now, I read a story a long time ago of a psychologist who taught his two little girls, you know, how to play chess from a young age. And since they've been practicing for so long, since a young age, one of them even became, you know, one of the top female chess players. So I'm pretty sure that if you look to what you've been doing at a young age and getting inspiration from there, you might be able to, you know, find something that you're really passionate about. Now, personally, when I was 14 years old, I was very analytical, you know, and I think that that's why I, you know, pursued eventually computer science. But originally, computer science wasn't my original, you know, thing that I wanted to pursue. I wanted to learn finance, you know. I wanted to, you know, become rich and so on. Now, I'm gonna touch on that later. So, of course, originally, I just, you know, read as much as I can about the subject. Eventually, I was reading a ton of books about the subject
Rayan,
and so on. Yeah.
Rayan, be honest. How much right now in your bank account?
All right. So now
this mindset is rich. I'm believing in you, but let's keep it between you and me because I need to gain.
All right. Now I think that there's something pretty interesting that I could say on that. So like since, you know, I've been you know, fortunate enough to, you know, have, you know, live at home and so on, I was able to save most of the money that, you know, I got from university. Now, I've been in university for 2 years, you know, so I've been making 1,000 riyals every month. I've been saving it rather than, you know, spending it on stuff that I don't really need. So if you do the math, then, you know, that's approximately how much I got. Also, of course, like from the internship, I, you know, made a bit of money, which I also, you know, rather than just spending it all on stuff that I don't really care about, I decided, you know what, let me just spend it, save it for the future, you know. Now, at a young age, like I said, I wanted to pursue finance, and I was really passionate about the topic. And eventually, you know, I got to the point where I was just reading so much about it, you know. I was reading a book about a hedge fund manager, and the hedge fund is a place where, you know, you could just give your money to some guy and he would, you know, manage it for you. And you know what he said? He said that there is no special, you know, thing that you could do to, you know, manipulate the stock market or whatever. What he was doing is that he was doing the safest bet that he could, you know. He was investing in, you know, IBM and so on. If you know, his customers were actually speaking to him and so on, he was like, you know, I don't want to tell my customers I lost your money on some random company and so on. I lost an IBM. So like, there is no secret. And even the most powerful hedge fund managers in Wall Street know that there is no, you know, special thing that you could do. Now, why is that? You know, so I really went deep into, you know, what does money even mean? You know, so way back, you know, in the 1960s and so on, all the currencies were tied to the US dollar. All right. Now, the US dollar was also tied to silver and gold. So if you were to give the US dollar to, you know, a bank or whatever, then they would give you some coin, they would give you some silver or gold. But since 1970 or 1969, they got off the gold standard, you know? So now money is not tied to anything, you know? what money is tied to is value. You know, people perceive this money as a store of value. So if you really want to become, you know, rich and so on, what you should do is you should pursue value rather than pursuing, you know, becoming the, you know, as rich as you can. Because if you think about it, what are you gonna give for that? You know, you're gonna give your time and effort, and you know, perhaps you might do something that, you know, isn't entirely ethical, you know, just to reach that silly goal of yours. So I'll go back to the question of, you know, why should someone hire you? You know, people want to hire you because they know that you would give them value, you know. So if you want to, at least from what I see, from my view, is that if you want to, you know, become rich, or if you want to, you know, get a job or whatever, then you should pursue value, you know. Now the question is, how do you become valuable, you know? And, you know, most people, they're like, you know what, I want to, you know, become good at some certain topic. So they're going to be like, all right, let's, you know, get some certifications, you know. And the thing is that I see lots of people care too much about certificates and certifications rather than actually mastering the subject. And I'll talk about that later on.
Yes, Rayan, I wanted just to link with the previous two guest speaker sessions with Muhammad and Faisal. The previous 2 weeks, the previous two weeks, yes, because something interesting while I have a discussion with you last week, something interest and urge my interest to know deeper about your philosophy of getting first making a strategy for gaining that internship and job, not just only jump to getting internship or job. Muhammad and Faisal highlight, they draw our attention, they highlight on these two elements, but you have a different perspective, and this is what make me interested to know more. Go ahead,
you know,
please.
I didn't watch their talks on purpose.
No, that should be quick. This is will enrich. This is will enrich the topic as well.
Yeah, so I didn't watch their talks because I really wanted to, you know, have my own opinions and share my own opinions and thoughts about the topic.
Great.
I didn't really look into, you know, even what they've even talked about.
No, right, from the discussion, I see something interesting in your mind, and this is what I want to get to know.
And I'm gonna eventually, you know, bring it all together, hopefully. So back to when I was, you know, learning programming for the first time in my foundation year, you know, I was learning with other people. I was discussing with other people, and you know, making projects and so on with other people. And once people saw that, you know, I was so, you know, I had these skills, I was able to, you know, produce value to them. That's when the opportunities came to me, you know. So that ties in with the value thing that I mentioned before. If you want to get an internship, if you want to get a job, then pursue value. Become as valuable as you can. All right, now the question is, okay, I was talking about certificates. Now, lots of people, they want to really reach their goal as fast as they can, you know? They're not really looking for quality of knowledge. They're not looking for really depth of knowledge or really mastery of the topic. They just want to reach their goal as fast as they can. Now, there's some, you know, good thing about that. They're really passionate, but I see this a lot in the groups. They're just like, you know what, I want a certificate. I want a, you know, just a piece of paper, you know, but it's not about the result.
Let's collect as much as we can.
No, it's not about the result. It's about the journey, you see. So what I'm trying to do in all of my courses is really understand at a deep level what exactly is going on. Now in CPIT221, like I never, like you could see like in the writing in some of the videos. Now I'm not that great at making videos, and at least at that point, but you could tell that, you know, there was something different. You know, I was really trying to actually learn. Like lots of people, they were just doing the minimum that they could. You know, they were just, you know, writing 200 words, you know, perhaps copying other people and so on. And meanwhile, I was actually trying to do my best to actually, you know, in the weekly writing, because I had my third goal for that I mentioned in the introduction video in CPIT221 is that I wanted to make a blog, you know. So I really wanted to really go deep into how to write, and explore all the ways I could write and really show my ideas and so on inside my weekly writing. And through that, I became better at writing. Now, I figured later on that, writing perhaps isn't the best medium for, all things. I think that at least right now that, the important factor, also, okay. So I thought you just disappeared. So like, it's not only about, writing, it's also speaking. It's also about making, presenting videos and so on. And I'll talk about speaking later on. Okay, so how to learn. Now, the first thing that I do when I learn is I try looking into the mindset. If you feel that they have the time to improve their skills. Okay. Okay, that's actually a really good question. And I actually missed something that I wanted to say. So like, when I begin the term, the first thing that I do, or perhaps before the term for a bit, I prepare what exactly am I going to learn, I organize all of the resources that I need into Google Drive and so on. And you're probably using my Google Drive, to all the people in CPIT 20 and 21, they're probably using my drive or resources from my drive. So the first thing that I do is I organize all the resources that I need beforehand. And then I try to understand the topics just a bit, just an overview of the entire course before I even begin. And I did that with CPCS202. I didn't know Java until a week. Yeah, I didn't know Java until I began CPCS202. But in the first week of CPCS202, I learned online. I actually decided to read these resources, actually program a lot in Java, and in 2 weeks I became an expert in Java. And I'll get into that in a bit. I have something that I really want to say about the resource that I used to learn Java, and I had an idea similar to that. Okay, so did I really answer everything that I wanted to say? So don't have the time to improve their skills. Now, I see something like this in what's happening to me right now. It's really important for you to get ahead and stay ahead. Once you fall behind in your university life, you're going to become farther and farther behind. So it's really important to not only get ahead, but also stay ahead. And once you stay ahead, once you understand the topic at a small level, once you actually take the course, once the professor is actually teaching it, you're going to see what exactly they are talking about. Maybe you understood it 50%, but once the professor actually covered it, you're like, okay, I already know this, and then now I'm going to connect the idea that my professor has mentioned with the knowledge I already have. So when you're taking the lecture, you're not getting this information for the first time. It's the second time that you see it. So then you could connect all the pieces and really get to understand this at a really deep level. So it's really important to get ahead and stay ahead. Now, the first thing that I do when I try to, and like I never consider myself studying. Like a thing that I see lots of people do is like when they say studying, they're like, this is something boring that I need to do, just to pass the courses, But that's like not my mindset at all. Like I never consider myself to be studying, I learn for the purpose of getting better, of learning something so I would be able to, produce value in the future. And, I missed something that I wanted to say earlier, like the reason that you are inside university in the first place is because society has understood that, rather than going straight into working, it's far more efficient for you to learn for a few years, for 4 years or 5 years, and then go to the workplace. If you think about it, inside university, you have the opportunity to really focus on your studies. You could explore everything that you want to be learning. And like I mentioned, you really, yeah, I'll get to that. Okay, so like once you are, I lost track. So like once you, yeah, so what was I saying? I should not read the chat until I'm done my talk, my part. No problem. All right. So, yeah, what was I talking about? Can someone remind me?
Yes, Rayan, you are talking about when you study courses, it looks like this is Walid. Walid is a naughty boy here and he distracted you. Welcome, Walid. I met him today. We prayed the Dhuhr together.
Oh, yeah.
You was talking about when you study something, don't study just only for grading, but to improve yourself and aim for the skills that you need to develop.
No, I was aiming for something deeper, but all right. So,
looks like same that Walid also distracted my attention.
All right. So I'll just go from the beginning. So the first thing that I try to do when I learn is I try to get into the mindset of the person who is, who created this topic, and there are two advantages of doing this, First of all, you could really understand rather than memorize, what the contents of the course. You really understand, the purpose. Why has this thing actually been created, And the second thing is that sometimes some things that you might be learning is not true, Like as an example, there's something called the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the output is created by 20% of the input, and you could see this with publications and people who write these articles, 20% of the people who are writing these articles are making 80% of the articles, and this is actually a generalization of something called Price's law and the Pareto distribution. So it's actually worse than 80-20. It's 50% of the output of all the publications of. Oh yeah, time. All right, so let me continue this point. So rather than it being 80% of the output being done by 20% of the people, it's actually worse than that. It's 50% of the output, 50% of the creative things that are being done, 50% of the productivity in a company, and so on, being done by the square root of the people inside the company or the place. So that's something that's pretty important. But if you just took the thing that people are saying at face value, you're not really understanding what's deeper in that. So I mentioned that time in university could be used to maximize. Okay, so I was talking about maximizing your time. Now a thing that I realized with myself, and a reason why I was pretty bad at speaking in the beginning, was that I actually thought slower than I spoke, So that was a very big drawback, and why I wasn't, able to really speak that well. And I'll get to how I improved myself later on. And the second thing is that my memory is pretty bad, and that might be a reason why I didn't enter medicine. I entered computer science instead because I was pretty analytical, and rather than my way of learning, rather than memorization, I really focus on understanding everything, and I feel like that's much more useful in the long term rather than just memorization. I see lots of people, they're just like, what, I'm going to memorize these formulas and I'm not going to really understand the concept. I'm just going to memorize it. But the thing is, once you enter that exam and you paste all the information you've learned, once you exit that exam, you're gonna forget everything. And I see this a lot. So like what I do instead is so once you understand it, it will stay forever, like Walid said, and Walid, he knows me, so I'm pretty sure. Okay, so what I do is I really understand what's going on at a deep level. I derive everything that's going on, and you could see this in statistics. Like rather than memorizing all these formulas, these random formulas that they give you, I understood those formulas. So now later on, once I exit the exam, I didn't memorize it in the first place, so I'm not gonna forget it. What I did was I understood the concepts that created these formulas in the first place. So later on, years in the future, I would be able to, if I ever come with a problem that uses these ideas, I would just be able to, derive them again, and I would understand them as well as I was when I first learned it. Now, like I mentioned before, we are social people. We want to communicate, and when you're playing a game, you enjoy it. Okay, so like when you study, why do you study alone? You see, like you study in the most boring way possible, and of course, when you study in the most boring way possible, you're not really gonna do your best, you see. So learn with others, you know. And another thing about university is that it provides an environment for you to learn, you know. You're surrounded with people who are learning the same subject, who are also, you know, students, and, you know, it gives you an identity, you know. If you are not a student and you are trying to, you know, learn something new, people are going to think, you know, why are you unemployed, you know, why didn't you get a job? And like, if you were to, let's say, apply to university, if you were to apply to work or whatever, they're going to see that gap in your you know, progress and whatever. They're going to, you know, think something's odd with you. So like, while you're in university, you're given an identity, you're a student. People understand that, you know, you are learning, you know, and you're exploring what exactly you want to be doing. And also, I'm pretty sure I forgot to mention this, but if you want to understand what you want to be doing, look to your past, okay? So understand what makes you tick, you know? And the second thing is understand your present, you know, where are you, you know? What opportunities are around you, you know? And if you are motivated enough, you would create your own opportunities, you know, like similar to what I have, you know. I've, you know, created that autograder, I've created that that website of mine. You know, I'll talk about that later, but it's not my idea entirely. I'm just, you know, I'll talk about that later on. All right, so definitely learn with others, you know. Learn in the way that makes you interested the most. Don't learn in a boring way, you know. And also, don't limit yourself to the people just inside your class, you know. Like, there are 7 billion people in the world. So there are only, you know, 20 people inside your class. So you're really limiting yourself when you are only dealing with the people inside your own class. You know, maybe you might be interested in, you know, designing, and there's no one else inside your class who knows designing. So what I've done is I learned, and of course I'm not a designer, but I learned from other people in the internet. You know, the internet is a massive place. If you want to learn anything or meet anyone in the internet, you're going to find people with similar interests that have analyzed the thing that you're trying to do in a way that's unbelievably better than what you are doing right now. And you said that, you know, the student identity thing is something you never thought of, and it's brilliant. That's, you know, something that this topic way better than me. What?
We come back. Yeah, we come back. Looks
Connection
like
is a
there
bit-
is a problem with the connection, Blackboard. Yes, you can go ahead, Rayan. We can hear you right now clearly.
I think it's a bit better now. Yeah. All right. So, like I mentioned, don't limit yourself to only the people inside your own class. You see, learn from the people online, and that's, you know, what I've done. And, you know, you could connect this with the opportunities thing. If you know more people, then there's more people who could give you an opportunity, you know, to, you know, advance your knowledge and advance your skills, and, you know, create stuff that, you know, gives you a track record. And, you know, if I were hiring, like, I wouldn't hire someone that has, you know, a degree, or like, I wouldn't really look at the person that has a degree or certifications or whatever. I would look at the track record, you know. Like, what has this person done, you know, in relation to what I'm trying to do? You know, how is this guy going to, you know, help me to, you know, produce value? And I would give him that, a part of that value. Yep. Now, on YouTube, I found that there was a slight problem. You know, if you look at my old videos, you're gonna see that they're pretty boring. You know, so while I did them with the intention of, you know, exchanging my knowledge, they were pretty boring, and because of that, you know, not lots of people watched them. You know, perhaps the people inside FSI2 who are doing statistics watch them, but not everyone in the world. You know, so if I were to go back, I would probably, you know, use something like Manim, which is a library that 3 brown 1 blue made, and you could animate what you're doing, or you could animate stuff that as a video with Python, and I feel like that would be much more interactive, much more interesting than just trying to draw by hand.
Yeah, Rayan.
And
Rayan.
yeah.
This is dragged my attention when I read your report at the beginning when you wanted to introduce yourself on a video. You recorded more than 100 times and you kept remove, and then one idea came to your mind to script something to write the words and it will say it for you. Then right now I can see you, mashallah, you realize that there is a weakness in your personality, and this is a proof where you are right now. This is a proof you work harder in order to, number one, increase your self-confidence. This is number one, which is more important. And number two, you have a seed of self-motivation, and this is what keeps you not feeling enough with anything that you get. You want to get more. This is self-confidence. And number three, you work really harder. I'm so proud to see you, mashallah, professor, khalas. You are professor, presenting, lecturing, and mashallah, with the full of confidence. I remember lots of students when they introduce themselves in the first video with that 2 minutes, they script things, they write on a piece of papers and they keep reading. Hello, my name is blah, blah, blah. This is not a problem at all. The problem when they keep denying this is not a weakness in their personality. For you, and this is what I want you to highlight your talk on, what makes Rayan, or how Rayan, I don't know in the beginning if you realize this is a weakness you have to work on or not. What makes Rayan rediscover himself and identify his weaknesses in order to improve, and highlighting his strength in order to enhance?
So like what and also like what you said is really important. Like if you are good at communicating, then that's when you build confidence, So and in the beginning I was really not a confident person, Like when I was in school, people were always like, why am I walking with my head down and so on. So like I'm not the kind of person that, displayed confidence, But once I started getting better at communicating and so on, I felt like I was much more confident and much more ready to, explore the world, you could say. And I'm going to get into, and I mentioned before that it's really important for you to be able to understand yourself, So if you understand your weaknesses, then you could build upon them. You could, and of course, if you understand your advantages, then you could, work towards your advantages, make them better. But also, if you understand your disadvantages, you could work around them. And sometimes, your disadvantages aren't actually disadvantages, Like I realized with my lack of memorization, lots of people memorize the formulas and so on, So if I was good at memorizing, then I would memorize as well. But since I'm not good at memorizing, I am so that really forced me to understand, There was a big problem when in my school years, I used to get, pretty mediocre grades. I was able to, think pretty clearly, but I wasn't able to, really remember them. And, at some level, that's a problem when I also speak. But, over time, it becomes better and better. And I'm sure next year, I'm sure that there's a huge difference between between me speaking right now and me speaking last year, you see. So next year, I would probably be much better than I am right now. So it's a continuous process. And I'm going to mention that right now. Like, what exactly should you be doing to really master a topic? So I'm going to talk about that later on, but I wanted to mention more about some other stuff. Now, I think that working together is incredibly important, Like if you are able to work together, then you could share your knowledge, and you could, build stuff together. And, one person, he might be able to do, something tiny, but if you were to work together, you're able to do much more than just if you were alone. And I'm pretty sure in the beginning of December, I'm going to give another talk on working together with the Google Developer Club. on, you know, actually working together, a more technical talk on how to work together, you know, to actually create programs and so on. So look forward to that. Now, I wanted to talk a bit about mathematics. Now, you might be thinking, you know, mathematics is boring, you know, and if you were to talk about mathematics in the context of, you know, FCIT, you know, I agree with you, that's pretty boring. But I'm pretty sure you all know Newton, right? The guy who, you know, had the apple hit his head and, you know, he discovered gravity. Now, what he's really interested in is the planets, how the planets moved, you know, how exactly do they move in relation to each other? And through that, he needed to invent calculus, you know? So to him, calculus wasn't boring, it was essential. You know, he needed calculus. And because of that, he was really passionate about it, you know? So you really need to be if you're really passionate about what you're doing and you have the right motivations, you're really gonna go deep into this topic, you know? And the same thing happened with Newton. Like I said, he invented calculus, you know? I'm pretty sure there were some things before that existed, but he really brought it all together. And with calculus, he was able to, you know, analyze the planets, analyze their trajectories, and so on. Because of course, you know that through calculus, you could get, you know, the derivative to, you know, get the slope, and if you integrate, you get area under the graph. So with that, he was able to, you know, get the acceleration if he had, you know, the velocity and so on. Now, so like mathematics is not boring, it's just the way that they teach it in university is boring. But if you think about it, you know, mathematics is carefully putting together ideas that have come before you to bring together a proof, or real mathematics is carefully constructing proofs that you bring ideas together to provide irrefutable evidence that what you're saying is true, you know. And there's something very similar to that with what I'm doing right now, you know. I'm trying to bring together a bunch of ideas to convince you that something is true. So there are parallels between different domains of knowledge. So so most people, they're like, you know what, I'm just going to learn one thing, you know. And someone mentioned earlier in WhatsApp that, you know, they just wanted to learn one thing, you know, they want to sit in a box and only learn one thing, you know. But the problem with that is that if you only know one thing, then that is not interesting, you know. If you only know programming, then you can't really do anything with that, you know. You need to apply programming into another field, you know. You're going to combine programming with, you know, statistics, you get data science, you get artificial intelligence. And if you were to combine, and you know, Steve Jobs, you know, he went to a liberal arts university where he's being taught stuff that, you know, isn't, you know, known to be very like STEM stuff, you know, like engineering and so on. But he took a calligraphy class, you know, how to, you know, actually draw the symbols and so on. And with that knowledge, he was able to combine it with computers, you know, to be able to create very beautiful interfaces. You see, this is way back when computers were very hard to use and they were very ugly. So once he brought this idea of calligraphy with his friend Steve Wozniak, and they created a computer that was really interesting to use, like really beautiful to use. And of course, he also invented the mouse to be able to use this computer in a much innovative way. That is when something interesting occurred. And if you look into the root of the word interesting, you know, inter for between, ing for doing something with a thing, you know. So you are not interesting if you only know one thing. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to learn about lots of topics. Now, you see that I mentioned before that I know, you know, a bit about finance. I know a bit about economics and philosophy and psychology and so on. And once you bring all these ideas together, that is what makes you interesting, you see. And then I hope that, you know, what I've said so far has made this talk interesting and so on. Yes, definitely. If you're passionate about learning, well, being passionate is a prerequisite for efficient learning. Now, I'm actually going to talk about this next, you know, about me speaking. And like this is actually the route to really master a topic. You need the passion and you need the time. And like I said, I'm going to talk about that later on, but I'll talk a bit more about mathematics. So with all the formulas that you have, how do you know that they're correct? So like I said, with like real mathematics, the goal is to actually prove what you are doing is correct, you see? So you could have that with parallels with speaking, if you are good at constructing these proofs, at convincing people that this thing is true, there's a parallel with speaking. And that's, if you understand those topics, then, you're going to become better at speaking. And that's some part of what you're doing in discrete math, but at a much higher level. You're actually proving that stuff is true. All right, so mathematics provided the foundation and the framework for the world we live in and all the innovations, So something that's really interesting about programming is that we just threw away mathematics, the core of science and the source of truth, we just threw that away. And now we're using object-oriented programming, but how did you get here? But when the paradigm came out, like the goal of programming wasn't that, encapsulation, abstraction, and all that. We had that in C, the C language. You were able to, do all those things in C, but what, object-oriented programming languages added was that you were able to program two interfaces. You were able to reverse the dependency. So rather than, if you have, let's say, a function or some data that, changes, it's not going to affect anything else because you programmed it to an interface. So rather than, programming with object-oriented programming, take the good idea, programming to interfaces, and throw away the rest, and once you do that, you get functional programming. You could go back to mathematics. You could see better ways of, designing programs, And recently I've been learning in really depth a language called Haskell, which I'm pretty sure Dr. Rayan has already, known. You mentioned before that.
You took me back again to my master degree. That was a nightmare. Haskell?
Yeah, Haskell.
How was it with you?
Yeah, I really enjoy it. Like it's so I'm building up to something.
You enjoyed
like,
it. It was a nightmare for me.
But like the thing is, it allows you to program in much more interesting ways than object-oriented programming. You have stuff called monads, and with that stuff, you could see these concepts flowing to other programming languages. You see, like if you were to program JavaScript, you will see concepts from Haskell and JavaScript.
This is Rayan, please. Yeah? I don't want the guys here to take me as an example. I'm a bad example in programming. Please don't copy me. Okay,
so
go ahead.
So the point I'm trying to make is like really go into depth of what exactly you're learning. Like don't take whatever you're learning at face value. Like really understand the topics, the history of the topics well. And let's say instead of taking while you're taking CPCS223, like really understand the roots of object-oriented programming. Don't just know like these are classes and this is how you do inheritance and so on. Like understand why should you do that stuff, you see? And I see lots of people, just blindly, like object-oriented programming, we should program to objects, but that's not really the point of object-oriented programming. The core of object-oriented programming, and I'll add a link to someone who really explains this in a much better way than me, is that you're programming to interfaces. Okay, and if you look to Haskell, there is a very similar concept to this. You could create, well, it's named classes, and you could create implementations for these classes, and you would be able to do what is best in object-oriented programming. Okay, and you are not only limiting yourself to that mindset, but you also have the world of mathematics. You have category theory, you have all these wonderful things, and it allows you to have different ways of programming, different ways of designing your programs. And you could see these ways of programming in many languages these days. Like if you go to JavaScript, you see lots of inspiration from Haskell in this language. You have higher order functions, you have map reduce, filter, and so on. You have async await, which is a monad, and that's something from category theory. But sadly, if you understand monads, you can't teach it. Have you ever heard of that, Dr. Rad? That saying, like, if you understand what a monad is, you can't really understand it. So, like, definitely look to other ways of programming. And through functional programming, I think that it's a much more interesting way to learn and so on. Like, I see lots of problems that people have in CPCS202. People are dealing with side effects in their programs. And now let me give you an example. So if I say that f of x is equal to x squared. Now, if I were to run this function, I would say f of 1, then you would expect it to be 1 squared every single time, But the thing is, when you're programming in CPCS202, you're not really like, if you make a function, it might change every single time you run it. You would get input, and then something else might happen. So it's really hard for you to understand how to create this function well, So it's much better to write functions that have no side effect. Every time you call this function with the same input, if I were to call f of 2, you would expect 4 every single time. So keep that in mind whenever you're programming, whenever you're making functions, avoid side effects. And so what you could do is you create, a function, and then what you could do is you could pass in arguments to this function, and then, you could really easily test this function and so on. So it's a much easier way of learning programming. So I just wanted to mention a bit of functional programming, because I think that's something that's pretty interesting, but it's not really covered in FCIT. And like, once you learn data structures and algorithms in functional programming, since there are no side effects, it's really trivial for you to be learning about these topics. So definitely give that a look once you enter CPCS 203 and 204. So I'll talk about the Cs50 group now. Now, as an experiment to find what's the best way of learning programming, I decided to create a group on Harvard Cs50. Now, I created a video on Harvard Cs50 and CPIT221. I just wanted to see whether it was only me who really took advantage of this course of learning to learn programming, or whether it was something more universal. And while it was really great to bring everyone together, because everyone was coming together and collaborating and congratulating everyone whenever they finish a problem set, because Harvard Cs50 is pretty difficult. Once you bring everyone together and people are collaborating with each other, discussing topics with each other and so on, that builds a community. Like I mentioned earlier, you should study with other people. So that's what I was trying to do. I wanted to show people CPIT221 how to program before they began CPCS 202, just to influence them slightly into programming in a different way. But I noticed that there is something missing. It is not really, like I mentioned before, it's not only about a course. It's not only about certification. I definitely realized that there was something missing. But I wasn't really able to place it until recently. So what I did, okay, so one day, I just realized I wasn't really happy with my communication skills, So I decided, all right, let me actually go out for a walk and talk for as long as I could, because at that point I felt like, it was my speaking skills were degrading slightly, and I really want to become better. I realized that there were lots of problems with the way that I spoke. So I decided I'll just go out for a walk, speak as long as I could, and just keep continuing on, and I became famous in FCIT21 for my 1 hour voice notes. And of course after that, after I did that, I was practicing for hours, or I decided just to dedicate 30 minutes of my time to actually develop my speaking skills. just talking with people, really analyzing some stuff that people said. Like as an example, the thing about social media that I mentioned before, like I just talked about that a week ago, and every single time that I spoke, I learned something new. I found that was something interesting. So I feel like if you speak a lot, then you're really gonna learn something new. If you don't, of course, if you don't stick to a script and you actually actively try discussing the topic without bias and so on, you're gonna learn something new. And I found that out by just discussing random topics and so on. So going back to Harvard Cs50, what was missing, and what was missing was practice, passion and practice. Like what someone mentioned before, it was you need to be really passionate about what you're doing, to be able to practice as much as you can. Now, I think over the summer and over this term, I probably spent about 100 hours actually speaking and so on. And you might be thinking, all right, like what most people are like, what course should I take? What certification should I take? What should I read? And so on. But like I think that that's all not getting to the point. If you really want to become better at something, what you should do is you should go out and actually practice. And I think that was what was missing in the Cs50 group, practice. Yeah. So if you are passionate about what you're doing, you're able to practice for longer. And that's what happened with programming for me. I was really passionate about programming. I really wanted to practice, and through that, I was able to spend a lot longer than others. So this is key. All right. So I guess since I'm no longer a student in FIT, I guess I should share it. Oh, it's stuck.
Should be okay right now? I don't know. Your voice is cutting out.
Is it only slow for you guys?
It should be fine right now. Hopefully the Blackboard will help us to continue our session. No, it should be okay right now. Should be okay. Rayan.
All right.
Now that's programming language. The courses related to programming language to the first year students looks to me. I don't know, and correct me guys if I'm wrong. Looks nightmare for first year students. Is it the same there in Canadian University where you moved to? Same concept?
Entirely different.
Different?
Like it's like the philosophy and everything is just entirely different. Like the first thing is that they start out with a functional programming language. Not Haskell, but they start out with Lisp. I think someone mentioned Lisp. Bukhari mentioned Lisp.
Can see Dr. Bukhari mentioned.
Yeah, so they start out with Lisp, which I think is pretty interesting. Like I mentioned before, since there are no side effects and you're just creating functions, the first thing is that since you're creating functions, you're creating really small pieces of logic, which people just fill in these functions, and then they're able to get immediate feedback on their progress by just testing their code. And something really interesting about functional programming languages is that you could test the properties of your functions. You could say that all right, this function has a result that has certain properties, and therefore you could add randomized testing. You could test very thoroughly your code. Like maybe if you're making a program or you're making a function to divide, then you might forget the case where you're dividing by 0. So if you have testing that's very thorough, you could really make people write code that's pretty thorough. I'm searching for the exact word, but you're able to write programs that are very
effective.
Yeah, they're very thorough. Yeah. So like you're covering all the cases.
Rayan, is codes, that right?
Clean codes.
Yeah, they are clean codes. They are messed up. They are not messed up with outside filters.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before,
what you want is what is there. Nothing extra, nothing less.
Yeah,
am I right, Rayan?
And like I mentioned before, like since there are no side effects, it's really easy for you to write these functions, and like you could immediately just test them. And there's an automated testing server online where you could post your code, and the assignments are pretty difficult.
Please, Blackboard.
Programming assignments are just outputs.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. No.
All right.
Should
So
be
like
okay
what I
right now.
noticed is that.
Blackboard, please. Okay, should
All
be
right,
okay
it's
right
back.
now.
So the assignments are far more challenging in Watchdog. In FCIT, most of the assignments are focused on the output. Like creating tables, creating the correct output. But the thing, but in the course that I'm taking, they really focus on actually creating functions, creating stuff that does certain things, right?
And based, Rayan, based on your experience, do you see that starting with the functional programming with the first year students far much better than going, what do we call this, Java and so on? What do we call them? Oriented?
Imperative.
Imperative. Imperative is more harder?
No,
Is
imperative
it
is
more?
like programming languages. Programming languages like Python, Java, C, and C++, and all of them are called imperative programming languages because or procedural programming languages because you're running this code line by line. But functional programming languages really focus on the actual functions. So you're creating a function to do something.
Let's assume Rayan, you are a decision maker and you want to make your own college. Which programming language type that you want to introduce the first year students to?
I would probably
functional.
choose this. Yeah,
Function.
Definitely.
Tomorrow, Dr. Bukhari, where are you?
I'm here.
Tomorrow I'm booking you to discuss the whole concept, and I'm dragging the attention of all the guys here. I'm dragging the attention of all guys. Dr. Bukhari welcoming any guys to his office. You can go and discuss with him, guys, and to anything related to programming. Dr. Bukhari, if you drink a cup of water, he is saying, wait a minute, let me code the program for you in order to help you drink the water. This is a crazy programmer mindset. Looks to me, Rayan, you're almost the same as Dr. Bukhari.
No, I think even worse. Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
So I think that functional programming is much more interesting. And now I think I'm going to talk about my graduation
Rayan,
project idea.
Did you mention that? Did you mention that in your proposal? Remember when you write a proposal in order to
I didn't know
prove
functional
that
programming
course?
yet, but
that is later.
Yeah, I
this
knew
is
like
great
some of the concepts, logical languages, such as Prolog or assembly. Is that what you mean? I don't know Prolog, but
yep.
I don't know Prolog. But I'm really passionate about programming languages. I think 12 right now. I know Coq, a language called Coq that's like used for proving stuff, which is pretty interesting. Like it's very similar to CPIT221, where you're actually constructing proofs and so on, but you could do it programmatically using a language called Coq and Isabel. Yeah.
Rayan, please calm down the guys here. I'm afraid tomorrow they'll go to the college, to the chairman of CS, and they keep complaining and to the dean, please, we need functional programming. This is hard for us. I'm afraid. Please calm them down and give advice. I'm afraid. I'll be in trouble.
Don't worry. I'm going to talk about
give advice.
like
give
where
advice.
to learn it right now. All right. So like I'm just going to talk about the graduation project idea I had for a bit. Now, before that, I need to give you some context. So, like the University of Helsinki, they have a bunch of program courses online, and what they did is that they have a programming course, let's say about Java, or about React and front end stuff, and also about Haskell, like I sent before. And what they do is that they collaborate with someone in the industry. to actually create the course. So there's one guy working, inside the university and one guy working in the industry, and they're coming together to actually create a course together. Yeah, like Linux Torvalds, I believe he's in the University of Helsinki. But like what they're doing is really interesting, like they're actually creating free courses, that anyone can do, and really do these courses and explore the concepts, and there are automated tests, and like I mentioned, it is a collaboration with someone in the industry as well as in the university, and it's for free. But like question I was thinking is, why is it free? Now the answer that I came up with is, it makes perfect sense. Just a few, perhaps a month of your time to create this course, but if only a couple people actually do this course and gain useful skills and actually go and do something interesting with this knowledge and skills, then that's going to be far more valuable to the entire society, you see. So my graduation project idea was to do something very similar, create some kind of platform where people could learn how to program, and I was trying to explore the best way to learn how to program for this purpose. I made the Cs50 group as as an experiment, like what is the best way to program. So I was planning on doing something very similar to what they have done, and perhaps done something where you could actually read stuff in Arabic and actually write some code and test it and so on. So that was my graduation project idea, and I think that this is the way to the future. I feel like there are going to be and you could see this with MIT, with Stanford, with Harvard. They all have courses online, so they definitely see that there is a future in online courses, you see. So my plan was to get into that, perhaps KU could be along those universities. They could have like lots of free courses online, and perhaps in Arabic, so people could actually, people in Saudi Arabia or in the Arab world would be able to, get better at programming. And a couple centuries ago, it was Arab golden age. It could happen again. But we actually need to work towards it. It's not gonna come out of nowhere. So like what I think is KU could be doing, is actually creating these free online courses to help people learn. But first, there needs to be we need to discover what is the best way of programming. So that was my graduation project idea. And you could even see Cambridge doing something very similar to much more success. They've really gone deep into teaching high school subjects, with the IGCSEs and A levels. Pretty sure you've done the A levels, right, Bukhari, Dr. Bukhari? So like there are plenty of universities who are trying to revolutionize education, and I feel like especially with Cambridge, they're trying to really make a really good curriculum for people to learn from, and develop their analytical skills and so on. So I think that this is a very interesting opportunity. Actually developing curriculum for people to learn from. So that was pretty much it for the graduation project. Now, in conclusion, someone mentioned let me get the exact thing that they mentioned. All right, so like we're definitely standing on the shoulders of giants. Like everyone here has learned from so many people before them. And like personally, like I've learned so much from you, Dr. Rayan Bukhari, and other people with like online, such as Richard Feynman, and even
Rayan,
Peterson. That's yeah.
Rayan, you learn more from me or from Dr. Bukhari? Let's make Dr. Bukhari jealous. It's more from me, yes?
I mean, I'm not really
Dr.
sure
Bukhari.
who organized.
Dr. Bukhari.
Yes, I'm here.
I'm making you jealous.
No. It is good that I learn from everybody.
Yes, go ahead, Rayan. Sorry
So,
for
Programming is
interrupting.
a mirror. Programming is a mirror, so we learn.
Yes,
so like
that programming from you.
like I was definitely inspired by lots of people who came before me, you know. And like one person in particular called Jordan Peterson, like he's a psychology professor at the University of Toronto, and like he could really form like brilliant arguments, you know, at will. You know, have any of you actually watched his, you know, lectures and so on? Like the way that he, you know, teaches and so on is just like pretty amazing. So like I really wanted to get better at that style of speaking, and like the way that he brings in facts and, you know, gives his own stories to you know, solidify those facts and so on. I feel like that's pretty inspiration. And of course, he has been inspired by the people before him as well. So yeah, definitely. So like, and of course he was inspired by, you know, psychologists before him, and, you know, Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher, and some guy called Alexander Solzhenitsyn, I believe, who wrote the Gulag Archipelago. And, you know, this one book was able to bring the collapse of the Soviet Union, you know. So like communication skills, the ability to read and write is incredibly important, you know. So definitely it's very important for you to be able to, you know, be able to learn to read, to be able to speak, to be able to write. Now, you definitely need to learn from the people before you, you know, understand what exactly their mindsets were, and be able to even improve upon them. You know, I see this a lot in CPIT221, you know, Samman and Faisal. I see that they've done like so many impressive things, you know. Like they probably saw that, okay, like from what I've done, you could do even better, you know. So it's really interesting to see that, you know, from the things that the people have done before you, you could improve upon them, you know. So it's really important to set your goals right, you know, understand who you are and, you know, why you're unique, you know, and understand your past, you know, and then understand where you are right now. What opportunities do you have around you? And then align yourself with your future goals, you know. And something interesting about us as humans is that we could project ourselves into the future. You know, we could think, you know, how exactly would we be in the future if we were to do this or this and this, you know. So it's important to set goals, you know, and it's incredibly important to be able to learn, you know, because if you aren't interested in learning, how would you really like, first of all, you're going to reinvent something that, you know, people before you have already learned, you know. So we are the next generation, you know, we are the people who will be innovating on what is already known, you know, leading companies and inspiring the next, you know. And with that, I conclude my talk. So I guess I could answer a few more questions.
Thank you very much, Rayan. I shared the last link that you shared with me. It was amazing, really amazing, and I want to go and rewatch again. That is the guy that guys. This is the guy that Rayan is mentioning, Jordan Peterson. This is your turn, guys. Thank you very much, Rayan. This is your turn to go ahead and ask questions, comment, and remember, Rayan, that's every time I say objections, I allow students to object. Okay, go ahead, Walid. Go ahead, please. You opened your mic, Walid, but we don't hear you. Seems there is a problem in your mic, Walid. In the meanwhile, anyone also want to participate until the
الحين صوتي مسموع؟
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. صراحة ما عندي سؤال محدد، بس حاب أوجه رسالة شكر للدكتور رايد والدكتور محمد بخاري في البداية، ريان على جيته. استفدت مرة كثير، ساعة 45 دقيقة مرت ما حسيت فيها حتى. بس بطلب طلب، أتمنى تسوون أشياء زي كذا المرات الجاية تكون أونلاين. ملاحظ أنكم متحتوها للكل، فهذا شيء كويس. يعني استفدنا من ريان، إن شاء الله نستفيد من غيره، وإن شاء الله يجي مرة ثانية. وشكرا لكم.
Thank you very much وليد. جزاك الله خير وليد، وإن شاء الله أنك على قائمة الاستضافات وليد. جهز نفسك. Any further commenting, guys? Come on.
What does the selection process look like for people you choose to work with? So I guess like that is adding on what I said before. If I were to hire someone, who should I hire? So like I would definitely look at their track record, like I mentioned before, like what exactly have they done, and like of course you all know Faisal, like he like I knew him before he became the Google Developer Club, and like he really impressed me, his ideas, his passion, and so on. And like I feel like it's really important to see passion, and an ability to learn, and also what have you done? Have you actually done something innovative? Have you done something different? And I feel like at least someone who's working really closely, who's managing and so on, that's pretty important. Now for someone who's just but I feel like you could define that question much better. Like for people who you choose to work with, as in I'm managing them, or they're working alongside me, so for people who I'm working, who let's say I'm going to be managing, I would look for passion, and I would look for, again, like what have they actually done. Okay, like the people you meet online and learn.
Study along. I think he means if I want to study with you, what are the parameters I should look to study with you?
So anyone you could choose. I found out that it's pretty hard to, someone who listens. What I noticed in while teaching is that like it's really important to have someone who actually like wants to hear what you have to say, and wants to learn. And the people that I meet online, I just be very general. Like I spread a wide net. I meet anyone that I can, and I try speaking to them and asking them for their experiences and so on. So it's not like I have something specific. All I look for, if someone's also online and looking for other people to learn with, then you know that they're pretty interested. So like them being online there in the first place, that's that's a good signifier that they're probably going to want to learn and so on.
That's great. Thanks, Rayan. Muhammad, go ahead, please.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الصوت مسموع؟
سامعك، تفضل.
في البداية حاب أشكر الدكتور رايد والدكتور بخاري على حضورهم في الجلسة، وحاب قبل ما أسأل أخذ الفرصة أن أشكر ريان صراحة. يعني قبل الكلية الجروب اللي تعرفت فيه على ناس من الكلية كان هو CS50، ويعني ما شاء الله تبارك الله جزاه الله خير على كل الأشياء اللي قدمها. يعني علاوة على أنه كان عنده انترنشيب، لكن كان يعطينا من وقته كثير ويساعدنا. يعني أتذكر واحدة من المرات كنت ستك في واحد من البروبلم سيتس، وأرسلت له على الساعة 3 ممكن في الليل، قلت خلاص أشوفها اليوم الثاني. فرد علي وجلسنا إلى الفجر وزي كذا. فجزاك الله خير. بالنسبة للسؤال، يعني مش احنا عارفين انه انت تسوي بروجكتس وزي كذا، وبرضه النظام اللي سويته الدكتور رايد السنة الماضية حق الفاينل ريبورت، فكيف كنت يعني تنظم وقتك بين الدراسة والمذاكرة والأشياء هذه وبين انك تطور نفسك وتسوي بروجكتس؟ ودنا تعطينا زي الهنت البسيطة كذا عشان نفهم الموضوع ونقدر نسوي مثل ما كنت تسوي.
Alright, so the first thing that I want to mention is that the best feeling that you could have is teaching someone and seeing them become successful. And I feel like Dr. Raid has a similar feeling. And whenever I see someone actually benefited from my YouTube videos or something that I have done, like I feel very proud and I feel very happy. So like if you were to do the same, just keep that in mind. Like that's a feeling that money can't buy. Now, okay. So what you mentioned was that like what brought me to create that project of mine, the autograder. Now I think something to realize is that the thing, like the term that I have done, like the first term in FSIT that I had, I was creating a ton of projects. That was the accumulation of so much knowledge that I have learned over, an entire year, And you could see this right now, You don't see me posting much right now because, I'm in the process of, rediscovering myself. I realized that, I realized that, I want to do something deeper than just web development, And, hopefully ask me in a year and I'll tell you something pretty interesting I'm working on right now. But it's definitely, a long process, it's not something that you want to hear, but it's something that you need to hear. It's just if you really want to, do something interesting, it takes time. Now, what I tried doing in the first term of SIT is every single week I tried learning something new. Like 1 week I decided, okay, let me create a project, and then the next week I was like, you know what, let me learn this course from MIT. The third week I was like, let me learn pandas. Now there's a library called pandas, used for analyzing data and matplotlib, and I just learned that. Okay, and I was like, I feel like this is going to be pretty useless. The week after that, I had the proposal, and I used that knowledge to analyze the data in the survey that I made to create the graphs for my proposal. So there's never useless knowledge. There's just knowledge that you didn't use yet. So what you see is just knowledge that the knowledge that I have accumulated for an entire year, and then I just decided, okay, let me show everyone what I've learned in that year, in that term, in the first term of SIT of mine. So now what I would recommend for you is, I'm pretty sure you mentioned that you have done CS50, or you have been doing CS50. So definitely continue that course if it interests you, and then just work on random stuff. Whatever you see interesting and worth doing, do it. And that's what I personally have been doing. Whenever I see something that's interesting to me, I focus on that. And to some level, like my university stuff suffers. When I was creating the website for CPIT221, I didn't study for my midterm exams. I didn't study for statistics. I didn't study for CPIT201. I was just working on that website. And something about me is like, I don't like sharing the things that I've done until I've actually done it. So Dr. Rai didn't really know that I was making the website until I'm pretty sure you didn't know that I was making the website if I was just going to make a normal report until I had a first draft, and then I showed you. And then I had the final exams, and I was working on my project through the final exams. But since I have followed the way that I mentioned before of studying, I was ahead. I really understood the topics that I am studying. Once I entered the exam, I studied the night before. I studied until like 4 or 5 a.m. and then I woke up to the exam. I got 100 in statistics. I got 100 in CPIT201, and you could even see on YouTube and Twitter what I did. For statistics. So like the question I'm answering right now is like, how do you balance creating these projects alongside university? So I was ahead. I really understood the topic, and you could see the way that I was studying on YouTube and Twitter. Now, okay, I'm gonna answer those questions, Bukhari. So like, the way that I study, statistics and so on, is I really understood the topic, and I made a YouTube video on it. I explained the topic, and when you explain something, that's when you reach mastery. If you could explain something and someone understood what you're explaining, that's when you've mastered the topic. So like, even when I was sharing my knowledge about programming in the Cs50 group and so on, I was learning in the process. I was connecting the dots. I was putting the puzzle together. And in CPIT201, and like I made an entire hour, saying how CPIT201 could be, improved. But like, I feel like CPIT201 is just like a collection of a bunch of random ideas. Like, you're not really focusing too much on, assembly or networks or and so on. Like, it's just like showing you at face value these slides. So what I did was I really went into depth on these subjects. They're teaching binary and operations on binary. So I decided, let me learn assembly. they're talking about networks. Let me learn and actually apply these network concepts and so on. And that is how I really mastered those topics, and that's how I got 100. I wasn't studying for the grade. I barely studied, you know, but I still got a high grade. And I don't care about the grade, but you know, I got the high grade because I really understood what was going on. And you know, about balancing university with projects, I found that me personally, like since going to Watcher, I couldn't really balance that, you know. And even when I was working in Toronto, like I had a bunch of ideas I wanted to do in the summer. Like I wanted to create my own artificial intelligence, you know, my own neural network, you know, from scratch without any libraries, you know, probably using like C or C++, and you know, just creating that, and you know, a bunch of other projects. You know, I was planning on creating like a Facebook clone for FCIT book, but like since you know I had you know so much work and so much university, like I wasn't able to actually do those ideas. So it's important to you know prioritize your time to you know focus on the things that are you know the most useful. But like recently, I've been focusing on actually learning. You know, I know that you know there's going to be the opportunity for me to actually apply my knowledge in the future. You know, in like in between the terms, or you know next in the summer or whatever, I'd be able to you know actually create those ideas and so on. So I guess did that answer? I hope that you know answered your question. So you okay? Let me look at what Bukhari mentioned. You know, mathematics can be fun. Now about mathematics, like I feel like there's too much focus on memorizing these formulas. You know, not actually understanding how these formulas work and so on. So like in Washington, the mentality of learning mathematics is entirely different. You know.
Mr. Rayan?
Yeah.
Are you talking to us from the perspective of Russian maths, which make you understand a lot? From Echo Perelman, for example.
Yeah, I heard Russian mathematics is crazy. But like what I'm trying to say about mathematics is like at least in Washington, like what they're doing is like really going through like the mentality of how you know how they actually created these formulas. Like for example, the quadratic formula, like they force us to derive it in one of the assignments, and like there's an assignment every single week in every subject, which isn't that fun, but you know takes a ton of time.
The PDF I have shared is from Peko Erelman, okay? Ero Pekelman. He is a Russian author. All his books are on fun with maths and fun with physics. So if you find interesting, you could let the guys know as well.
All right. So I guess we could, you know, if you want, we could have another talk later on you know, perhaps discussing, you know, a bit more about programming and mathematics. So we'll see about that later. But let me go through the other questions. So how long does someone need to review a subject or lesson before the lecture? As long as it interests you, you know, like you're not gonna. You shouldn't do something if, like I mentioned, I never consider myself to be studying. You know, I always consider myself to be learning. You know, so I only study or I only learn as long as I enjoy it. You know, and it's definitely like if you're not actually interested in what you're learning, I feel like the best option is to change majors. And you know, one of my professors in FCIT, he even mentioned, you know, there was this guy who was in medicine, like he wasn't doing that well in medicine. You know, but once he transferred into law, I think he went into law, like his grade just went up dramatically. He started getting 5 out of 5 and so on. So like if you feel like whatever you're studying isn't interesting to you, then I think, and of course you do need to try, you do need to, you know, put in the effort. But if it doesn't interest you, I feel like the best option is to, you know, change your major. So like a summary to how long does someone need to review a subject or lesson before the lecture? As long as you feel like you're passionate about the subject. And you know, like the thing that you're studying from is important, you know, like I never study from the slides. You know, I study from, let's say, YouTube videos, which, you know, really explain the topic in a much more interesting way, you know, with animations or, you know, in a way that's much more interesting. You know, like there's a 3 brown 1 blue video of like him explaining linear algebra, and like he explained it in such an intuitive way that like I wanted to go out and actually, you know, actually apply this knowledge and so on. So, you know, just be passionate about what you're learning, and look for resources that you love, you know, to actually explain it in an interesting way. Now, is there too much information on the internet? Which one to choose or identify as the best one? Now, this is actually a pretty good question. Like I mentioned before, like anything you want to learn on the internet exists on the internet. So the question is, like, how do you actually filter what is good and what is bad in the internet? And like, I feel like you can only do that through experience. But like one thing that's pretty interesting to do is like speak with other people who have actually done the things that you actually want to, you know, to learn. You know, what from what I have learned in the past, you know, I was following other people who actually learned computer science. Like I was speaking to a guy in Australia who was learning computer science, and like he's the one who introduced me to Haskell. He's the one who introduced me to, you know, algorithms and data structures when I was still in taking it in between, you know, the summer before CPIT.
Rayan, forgive me, the Blackboard gave me announcement. It looks like they changed their policy. I put it until 10, and they sent me announcement here. Your time is finished. Within 5 minutes, they will close the session. So continue talking. Please forgive me, guys. This is not the thing that happened the last two previous sessions, but it looks like a Blackboard, they changed their policy. Once the time is ended, I put it until 10. I thought that I can continue as long as I can. But
we could make a new session. I'll send it.
We can continue, but when it's ended, because they recorded, it will be here.
Yeah,
once it's ended, I'm thanking you right now. Let's continue talk until it's ended, and inshallah I will organize another session.
All right. Yes, right after this one?
No, you can go ahead. You can go ahead, talk and answer. You see, Kamal, he's asking, how do you study something you are not passionate about?
Yeah, that's actually a really important question. Like, okay, thank you, Dr. Rayan. Thank you, Dr. Rayan, for setting this up. If you could, like, maybe, okay. So, have you ever tried learning something you weren't passionate about? Yes, like I wouldn't say that's something that I wasn't passionate about, but like Islamic was a bit hard, you know, because I'm not that great at Arabic, and you know, but what I did was I studied with other people, you know, like I studied with my friend, and I helped him in the other subjects, and he helped me in you know, in the Arabic subjects, you know, and through that I was able to overcome the thing that I wasn't passionate about, you know, and the thing that was difficult for me to learn. So like, he helped me in the Arabic subjects, I helped him in the other subjects, and I helped pretty much everyone in the other subjects. You're not exactly passionate about programming, but I understand how incredibly valuable it is. Now, the thing that you might be experiencing is, you know, possibly programming might be interesting to you, but you're not learning it in an interesting way, you know? Like if you check out Harvard CS50, you might feel like, you know, that has really explained it and taught it in a way that's interesting to you. But once you start learning it in university, you might feel like it's a bit, you know, a bit more dry. Now, I feel like it's going to end pretty soon, so I just wanted to, you know, thank Dr. Raid. So thank you for setting this meeting up, and we should definitely, you know, I'm definitely down to meet next year, or you know, in between the terms, if you like.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rayan, for giving us this time. And please, once you go to Canada, keep in touch. We will continue. We need to share the both experiences from here and there. And looking forward to have another session after you spend maybe one more semester. When will you leave there?
I'm going to leave in December, so in a month exactly.
That means the next semester you will be there.
Yeah.
Maybe at the end of that semester, I may organize another session to share both experience to see how things are going with you. Thank you very much, Rayan. Thank you very much, Dr. Bukhari. Highly appreciate it with all of you guys attending, benefiting here. Please forgive me. This is out of my control. I wish that I can continue like what we did with the previous two sessions, but looks like Blackboard is changing their policies and they have to end within 1 minute. Any final remark, Rayan?
Would you like to make another session, and we could, you know, continue for a bit more?
It seems hard because some of them here are guests. I don't know. I don't have their emails.